On September 22nd of 2000, what started out as the family outing of a lifetime would quickly take a dark turn. Bradon Zucker and his family were having an amazing time at Disneyland. Their day was coming to an end, but decided to go on one last ride. The ride was called Roger Rabbit Cartoon Spin, which was first opened on the 26th of January, 1994. This ride was based on the very successful award-winning film Who Framed Roger Rabbit and was a fan favorite in the park at the time. The ride was basically a zigzagging taxi filled with wicked weasels and other surprises. When you get on the ride, it can only fit 2 people per taxi cab. Once everyone is ready, the cab leaves the loading area once the traffic light turns green. The guests would ride around Toontown while their cab would spin 360 degrees. The Zuckers, who lived in Canyon County, northern Los Angeles, California, had arrived at the park at around 11 a.m. It was just around 10 p.m. when Bradon, who was wearing tennis shoes and Mickey Mouse ears, jumped into the taxicab with his 6-year-old brother Nicholas and his mother, Victoria, who took control of the wheel. Bradon sat near the opening on the passenger side door. Bradon's father, David, and his grandmother, Jean Curlin, sat in the car behind. The traffic light in the loading area had turned green, and the taxicabs were off, not knowing what horror would soon take place. Within minutes, disaster struck. When Bradon's mother bent down to pick something up, Bradon fell out of the cab. Bradon's father watched this happen from behind. According to his father, Bradon didn't even have enough time to react or scream for help. It all happened so fast. His father began to yell, "Bradon fell out! Bradon fell out of the car! He's underneath the car! Get him out!" By now, his father and mother were both yelling and screaming for help. Bradon was trapped and stuck underneath the taxicab. David rushed out of his moving taxicab, urgently trying to stop the car, which had dragged Bradon around 10 feet before stopping. He tried to pull the car off of Bradon, but it wouldn't budge. At this point, Bradon was not moving. He was trapped between the center bar and the vehicle's right side. His grandmother sat beside him and gently stroked his hand, attempting to comfort him. But Bradon remained unconscious with his hands shaking. There were allegedly no security cameras located in the area where the incident occurred, so it took some time for people to see what had happened. Around this time, the attendant realized something was wrong and shut off the ride, and then pressed an emergency button. The park did not disclose what exactly this button did, however. Bradon's father then ran to him and screamed at the man, "My child is stuck under the car! Help me!" After pressing the emergency button on the control panel, he allegedly ran with David to the small boy and tried to help him, while another attendant was told to call 911. Not only was 911 not called when asked, but one worker allegedly chose to call their supervisor, who was on break at the time of the incident. The lights turned on, and the ride was evacuated. However, according to witnesses Allison Fields and her husband Frank Leon, they saw David begging for help and assistance. The ride operator originally went with David, but then returned, which prompted him to return for a second time. According to Fields, a number of men wanted to help them, but Disneyland employees warned them to stay back. David came back for a third time, and ride operators simply ignored him again. By now, the guests just ignored Disney officials, and around 10 people jumped the barriers to help the child. Allison claimed that she tried to check for a pulse but couldn't find one. Someone attempted to lift the cab off of Bradon but were unsuccessful, and Bradon remained trapped. Such a terrifying scene. Bradon's mother was screaming, "Not my baby! Please, God, anything but my baby!" Another witness stated that it took Disneyland too long to inform the police. Once the call was made, the police arrived within 3 minutes, with firefighters joining them. Immediately after locating Bradon, the firefighters used a jack to free the boy from the ride, where Disney rescue staff performed CPR on the boy until the paramedics arrived and took over. Miraculously, paramedics managed to get a pulse. At this point, Bradon was blue from the lack of oxygen and couldn't breathe on his own. He was then transported to UCI Medical Center, where he underwent surgery for over 2 hours. Although Bradon survived, he would never be the same. Bradon had a ruptured diaphragm, liver, and spleen. among other major internal injuries. When the ride crushed Bradon, his 45-pound body was folded in half, which sent him into cardiac arrest, sustaining brain damage. After the incident, he was unable to walk or speak and spent more than a month in a drug-induced coma. Bradon would remain hospitalized for some time and would miss Halloween and Christmas celebrations with his family. While opening presents on Christmas morning in 2000, Nicholas began to cry and proclaimed that he missed his brother. This tragic incident was the state's Division of Occupational Safety and Health's first significant investigation under legislation governing amusement parks. The law made it mandatory for parks to report significant injuries and accidents, and also gave the state power to investigate and order repairs. After this disaster, state investigators disclosed that the incident was caused by the lap bar not being lowered entirely and Bradon being closest to the opening of the car. Because of this incident, authorities immediately ruled that the park had to install doors on both sides of the car. It also ordered a sensor-equipped guard around the bottom of each car, as well as other substantial safety adjustments to the ride. The Roger Rabbit cartoon spin ride would remain closed until 2001, when it would reopen with the new safety precautions installed on each car. Disneyland was then rightfully sued by the Zuckers, who settled for an unknown amount to help pay for his expensive medical treatment. This incident was widely publicized, with every event of note being picked up by both local and national media outlets. In the time since the trial, OSHA has also argued that the ride attendants did not correctly follow protocol. Since Bradon was the smallest passenger in his group, he should have been seated away from the opening in the car. Bradon then spent the next 8 years of his life in and out of hospitals. His mother stated he battled with this for 8 years in and out of the hospital, and he fought for a very long time. We did every kind of therapy and everything we could possibly do for him in the 8 years. He just got tired, but he still gave us a lot of love, and we gave it to him. Sadly, Bradon's health continued to decline, and he died in his mother's arms at Children's Hospital of Orange County on the 26th of January, 2009. He was only 13 years old. After his death, his mother stated every time he was poked and prodded, another piece was taken out of my heart. I've been grieving for 8 years. He's running and playing with all his legs and feet on his scooter up in heaven. His father and I gave him the best quality of life that we could. He was a great son, and we love him so much. We will miss him greatly. Bradon was later buried at the Pacific View Memorial Park in Orange County, California. Disney spokeswoman Susie Brown released a statement saying, "We are saddened to learn of the passing of Bradon Zucker. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family at this difficult time. May Bradon Zucker rest in peace."